of the firm belief that one's life is made up of a number of seasons. These are portions of time between events, possibly, certainly between changes of personal ideal that sort of affect the individual across a number of years. I think the best way to explain this would be the season that I've been in for the last 5 years. This season started when I wasn't able to stay in London. I had been down working at St Paul's Cathedral. It was a 2-year fixed contract, and when I left, the idea had been that I stayed down in London. Unfortunately, about a month before I left, I fell over and I broke several fingers. This of course meant that I was going to be out of work at the time that my tenure ran out. No work, no money, so no way of staying in London. I was forced home to my parents, up to Harrogate, which is where I am now. And then things sort of, that sort of closed the book, if you like, on that particular chapter, that particular season, and opened up the season that I'm in now. And so from about November of 2009, I was looking towards some sort of major change, and it's taken me quite a long time, but I finally launched a 5-year programme. I've not actually done this sort of thing before, but I've launched a 5-year programme with long-term aims, and goals and ways of achieving them that I think will be alright. And we're talking some quite substantial goals as well. And I think that it's going to be hard because, you know, this affects several portions of my life. Really, it affects the money, my financial situation. It also affects, it's going to have a marked effect on my health, and to begin with, that's going to be quite a struggle, I think. You know, I wouldn't say deeply unhappy, but I'm not where I want to be, and I think that I have to actually start doing some major things in order to change, to end up going in the right direction again. I think one of the main problems has been being on sertraline, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I think sertraline helped me overcome my anxiety and overcome depression, but I think there's been a long-term side effect that really has only come to my attention in the sort of past year or two. Largely, sertraline helps as a mood enhancer because it breaks the cycle of obsession. And I think there are sort of several types of obsession. There's the obsession that forms habits, and that can be sort of good or bad. But there's also the obsession that that you can get worry and fears over, and they just go round and round in your head and you can't get them out. And that's the sort of thing that sertraline's good at breaking. Unfortunately, what I think it does as well is break a lot in terms of drive and one's will to get something completed. Because in order to do that, you have to focus on something to make it almost an obsession whilst you're sort of doing it, whilst you're forming the habits you need to form to make that happen. And it sort of breaks that as well, because I think there isn't much difference, chemically speaking, between the sort of obsession that can ruin one's life and the sort of obsession that actually characterises a very prolific life indeed. So one of the things will be to come off the sertraline Another of the things is going to be to lose a substantial amount of weight, and there's a number of things that I'm putting into practice, which I think over the next couple of weeks I'm sort of going to highlight a little bit more. It's both quite an interesting time and quite a daunting time for me, because I've sat down long and hard and thought about this and sort of planned it all out. I think it's achievable, but I think I'm going to have to work against portions of myself which don't want to change or like the status quo. My mind's a difficult instrument indeed, because it has a nasty habit of wanting to sabotage a lot of the things that I do. And I think that is possibly because it is more scared than I am. And I know I'm sort of talking about myself in a duality here, but it's difficult if you haven't been in a situation where your will wants to do one thing, but your mind will go to great extent not to almost break your own will. That's kind of what anxiety can do to people. That's what clinical anxiety is. It's where your mind basically is a debilitating factor against your own will, and you end up in a terrible pickle, because the mind actually has control over your body, and your will doesn't really. Your will's supposed to have control over your mind, but some people's minds are terribly active. I mean, my mind is not playing up at the moment because I think there is this sense that I've spoken so much about this in the past, that there's a sort of almost a sceptical view that there's nothing for my mind to get worried about, because at the end of the day, give it a week or two and it will be a funny phase that never gets off the ground, you know. But I think it will get off the ground. I think it already has, really. I put a lot of preparation in, and I'm taking things quite seriously, and I expect there to be results very, very shortly.